A good day to all the CFO Club listeners. Welcome to another podcast with me, Nicolaas van Wyk, the editor and host for CFO Club, as well as the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Business Accountants. Today, the podcast will be with Fransua van Westhuizen, a seasoned CFO within the energy sector, and I think that is particularly relevant given South Africa's own decision about renewables, what we're going to do with our coal, and will we do nuclear. And there's a whole discussion about Africa and us as a continent competing economically and needing energy to do that. So really looking forward to a discussion with Fransua. But just before I introduce Fransua, I just want to mention a little bit more about the CFO Club. So the CFO Club started in 2016 already when we hosted the first Africa World Congress of, the first Africa CFO Conference. And from there, the CFO Club became a founding member of the global body for CFOs, the International CFO Alliance. The CFO Alliance represents about 22 countries and their CFO associations. So similar to the CFO Club, being an association for CFOs and representing the interest of CFOs in Southern Africa, we also find that there are other associations similar to us that represent the interests of CFOs, and that includes Brazil and Argentina, France, Germany, Italy, Morocco, Tunisia, Western Africa, Mexico, and other countries. And we then meet regularly as a board and have 3 working groups. But if you're interested as a CFO and you want to build your CV, you're welcome to contact me, become part of the CFO Club, and I can propose you as a member of the working groups for international tax, automation and digitization, ESG, and also CFO certification. So the CFO certification work group, I'm the chairperson of that, and it actually was continuing a project that started in Europe with our Italian colleagues from ANDAF. They were working with the European Qualifications Authority and standard setters, and the big discussion was whether there could be a global CFO standard or a competency basis that will give clarity for employers and what to look out for when somebody is appointed as a CFO. I suppose similar to the CFA, the Chartered Financial Analysts, being a global body for financial analysts and setting the competency. So the project is, can we do such a thing with CFOs? And the work group of the ICFOA, which I'm the chairperson, is now engaging with the EU. The EU has actually accepted that project, and it will be a 3-year project. And then there will be a standard for CFOs in the EU, which we suspect then will become the international standard. So if you're interested in participating in these exciting developments, whether it's international tax or automation or ESG or the CFO certification, then please contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn or you can contact the CFO Club. The CFO Club is a brand of the Chartered Institute of Business Accountants. CIBA is a professional body registered with SAQA, and we issue designations for all levels of accountants. And our flagship designation is the Chartered CFO designation that we issue for CFOs through a whole process of evaluation and peer review. And this is then also the model that we've built that they are now considering within the EU. So really exciting times within the CFO profession globally and then also in Africa. So that is the introduction on the CFO Club. Now let me then introduce Fransua, our latest CFO to be introduced or to be podcast for the CFO Club. As I said, Fransua is a seasoned professional, and I'm reading here from his LinkedIn page. So you can contact Fransua. It's Fransua, Fransua, Fransua van Westhuizen. On LinkedIn, you'll be able to find him and connect with him and start your networking process. I'm just reading from his profile. He's a C-suite finance executive with 20 years experience, obtained from contributing to multinational organizations across different countries and cultures. A strategic thinker that combines experience in education, people, and technology-driven skill sets to achieve targets. He's got experience in corporate finance, engineering, project execution, renewables, nuclear, agriculture, manufacturing, construction, mining, plant, machinery, and human resources. And he's got a wide ranging of experiences from being the Chief Financial Officer at the CD. I think that was a past position that he filled. He's currently being an outsourced CFO, which I know is quite a popular thing to do for experienced CFOs, to start their own consultancies and share their experiences. And we want to talk to him a lot more about that and how he sees that role, the new role planning out. So previously the CFO of CIBA, which is an energy company specifically in nuclear. He previously worked at Tyson for 11 years, head of finance at Hyundai, and then business analyst and a whole bunch of other things. So thank you very much, Fransua, for joining us at the CFO Club and doing this podcast with us today. May I then ask you, please give us an introduction to yourself, your career, what you studied, and how you ended up in the energy field.
Nicolaas, thank you very much. And first of all, I must extend my compliments to you and for the initiatives that you're driving with the CFO Club and the good work you're doing with the EU and with CIBA. We need people like yourself to drive these initiatives and make the world out there aware of the contribution that finance people can contribute to the world. So first of all, my compliments. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to join you. Nicolaas, so my career started, I matriculated at Fransua High School in 1996. That is a school right next to the University of Johannesburg. I completed my bachelor's in accounting in UJ in 2000. I remember standing in a beach, it was 2000, Y2K was a big thing then. And I saw the fireworks, and a day previous to that, I received my results, and I was very, very fortunate. And I looked up at the sky and the fireworks and felt very happy and blessed. Through my second and third year, I used to work night shifts at local Melville, which is close to the University of Johannesburg, and so I had to help myself through that. And then I completed my BCom honors through UNISA, and I did my articles through a small town in the south coast. It's called Amanzimtoti. I recall still walking with my CV and dropping it off, not really knowing what I was leading myself into. And it turned out that the partner of the firm was actually the brother of the athletics coach I had in high school, although they were 600 kilometers apart. So it's sort of a way in there. But it was exceptional good experience. And what I learned from the smaller firms is that we could do from the engagement stage with clients, the planning and up to the close, and work closely with entrepreneurs and close the positions and obviously the tax aspects. So it's sort of from an A to Z. The firm was later taken over by PKF in Durban, as all things go. And today I'm a proud member of CIBA. So that is my educational qualifications and background. If one looks at my career, those things that shaped it, I was very fortunate to have met an exceptional CFO very early on in my career. I think it's important that there's mentorship within the finance space, and I learned a lot from him. He was ex-General Electric, and he was a New Zealander, Australian, and he guided me through the process. He held my hand, but what was good from him is that he saw talent and he saw willingness, and he imparted from that, and we filled each other very well through that. I also spent a year working for him in Melbourne, and that exposed me to international trends and the way things are done differently. Another thing that stood out to me was my first visit to an African country. Living in South Africa, a lot of us are sort of, I wouldn't say in a bubble, but we don't get to experience that. We see Zimbabwe or the Vic Falls and so on. And it was my first visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and meeting my team members that I managed face to face, walking the dusty streets with them in their hometown, and meeting exceptional people that extremely talented and had a sense of perseverance. I also had an opportunity to work alongside exceptional entrepreneurs, and I had the opportunity to assist them in building various different financial solutions around their businesses. I think finance people aren't necessarily always born entrepreneurs. We learn that a bit later on in life. And I had the opportunity to work with these people and experience those. A lot of that is very eye-opening, and it's been a privilege to contribute in my little way to their successes. I also had the opportunity to work alongside Japanese colleagues, and I was exposed to the Toyota environment and learned exceptional best practices from them. And especially the way they report financial information, it differs from the traditional way we're doing things. Of course, the exceptional standards. So that is sort of my career progression in a nutshell. And then I found myself attachment and Lycedian finance consultant at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Fransua. You mentioned a few things there, and it resonated with me. The first one was you did your articles in a smaller firm, and sometimes we think that the only route to becoming a CFO is through the big four articles, do your CTA, become a CA, and then you'll be a CFO. But we spoken with so many highly experienced and competent CFOs of big corporates, large entities, global entities that didn't do the CA route and didn't work at the big four. And there's very often a misconception. I too did my articles in a few smaller firms. But you're right, the experience you gain there is an all-rounder, and you see so much of the things that I suppose is missed at bigger firms. So there is something to think about for people that want to become CFOs, aspiring accountants. You learn a lot from a smaller firm. And then the second thing you mentioned was the mentorship. I was also thinking about my own career and how important that is. And even now, one tends to forget how important mentoring is for the up and coming generations, showing them the ropes, giving them time to grow. And I'm also very thankful for everybody I learned. I think the lessons I learned in some of those practices I worked in later on in life, that shapes you. And then the third thing was your experience in Africa, seeing different cultures and different economies at work, opens up your mind to different possibilities other than just being fixed. I didn't have the opportunity to work in Japan and see how effectively they can report and maybe explore that a little bit more. Tell us, what did you see specifically in Japan that has been a lasting legacy in your own career?
I think it is an embrace of all-inclusiveness, and there's an immense focus on productivity and efficiency. So the numbers are normally just an outflow of a certain set of activities and processes. So it's an all-encompassing process that they foresee. Typically, the reporting fashion would be in an A3 format, and I was taught if you cannot put it on an A3 paper, it's not worth it. So sometimes we're confronted with masses of pages of IFRS information, etc. But management decision-making information, I was taught, if you cannot put it on that A3 paper, it's not necessarily worth for the executive to learn. It's just a small thing that I took away from there. So definitely the efficiency and I think care towards each other as well. And I think they might tend to overwork themselves a bit. So there might not be the work-life balance that we necessarily seek always, but exceptional perseverance and an absolute sense of responsibility towards each other and their country. I think that is what I took away from there.
A few interesting concepts that you mentioned. I was also thinking about those things for a while now, and that is so often in business we are taught at business school and in the books that we read about diversity in the workplace. But if I look at, and it might be a controversial topic, but if I look at the Japanese culture, it's very homogeneous cultural group
True.
that makes it, I suppose, sometimes easier to coordinate activity, like you just said. How do you, because that's the biggest thing in my business, my experience, how do I make sure, and I've got a small team of about 31 people, how do I get everybody to step in the same direction, think in a similar way, driving the business, being proud of the business, thinking about, really focused on the member service, and not, and it's a difficult concept, not bringing in your own ideas about what you think about human interaction, but making it efficient for the business, because that's what we do. We service
True.
members. And then there's a wide variety of cultural backgrounds that you have to consider, which brings its own benefits, diversity, because it enriches the process, it shows you things that you didn't previously know. But there is do you lose something or do you win something? Is it a combination? Is it homogeneous versus diversity? And I was thinking about diversity, and even if you had people from different cultures working in your business, if all of them have the same personality type, then you don't really have diversity, because everybody's still thinking the same. So is
True.
diversity not more about personality type? That should be different, so they add more insights and perspectives. But within a multi-diversity culture like South Africa versus Japan, how do you, and you with all of your experience as a CFO in different businesses, how do you get everybody to walk in unison, have the same rhythm, and think the same way about the entity?
Nicholas, I think at the end of the day, one needs to realize that we are all people. And there are certain things that make every single person tick. We all have families, we all have things that we care about. And we need to be adaptable to that. Your organization might have a specific goal and a specific outcome. And it is important to harness the talent of each specific individual to reach that. I don't think there's necessarily a Bible to say this is the way how to do it. And I think that is what makes a good leader as well, is to understand what good aspects or talents are in those specific individuals, or pointing individuals in specific positions to lead you that way. But to have a very diversified team is a very important aspect, especially in the global marketplace. I believe, and like I said, people are just people. Europeans sometimes resonate more easily with a European, or whatever the case might be. An IT person in my team isn't necessarily thinking the same way as I do. I might have the business idea, he's got the skills to be able to execute it. But I think a leader needs to find what resonates within his team. And then consider that people are just people, so that we can achieve those goals. So what we need to create an environment where we seek the same goal and derive the benefits that we as people take home. Um, so yeah, like I said, I don't think there's a golden rule, but if we keep those principles at heart, I think we can achieve what we need to.
Some good insights. I tend to agree with you. Let's focus a little bit more about your previous role as CFO at the CD. I think when I browsed through your LinkedIn profile, I saw a few posts that you made about events that the CD sponsored and hosted, the South African Institute of Engineering, specifically about energy, and you guys attended the Energy Week in Africa. And that I've been reading a bit about the energy. I'm not an expert in that field, but I can clearly see there's these different stakeholders with different interests. There's the renewable group, wind and solar. There's the traditional mine and coal group, and then there's the nuclear group, and there's now obviously a policy paper, and I think soon there'll be a climate act, and South Africa has to decide what's going to be this mix of energy, and then there's a lot of pressure from Europe specifically and the West that Africa should go renewable energies. I follow the Africa Business Chamber or Africa Energy Chamber, and they're very keen on making sure Africa uses its coal resources, because they're saying that our contribution to global CO2 is so minuscule that we need that cheap energy to get us industrialized. But Europe is saying no, or the World Bank is saying no, we'll pay you a few billion. Don't do that. Invest in solar, which has its own issues, because what do you do when those solar stuff, the roofs, everything that everybody now has, the panels, how will we recycle them? I don't think they can be recycled. And then there's a whole question about mining those resources to build those panels. And then what's funny for me, I'm staying in Louwburg. That's my residence, and I can see Coburg. Every morning I see this nice nuclear facility that South Africa built many years ago. And then I think that South Korea has 26 or 30 nuclear power plants. That small country of South Korea. And then I'm thinking France has 40 of them. How is it that Africa only has this one little nuclear power plant for the whole of the African continent, the youngest population, the biggest continent, in need of the most electricity and growth, and we can't build another one? It logically doesn't make sense to me. Just your view, because of your work as a CFO in the city, how do you see this energy story developing in Africa?
Nick, so I think first of all, in terms of Coburg, exceptional facility. I've had a privilege to visit it before. The thing about nuclear is, and I think in the African space, is one, expertise. A nuclear engineer is not something that is easily come by. And I think secondly of all is cost. And many people think, why is nuclear so costly? But it is the absolute quality standards that have to go with that. For example, the nuclear regulator prescribes that if a piece of equipment is designed, that the engineer that is designing it needs to be reviewed by a qualified engineer. And after that review, it needs to be once again reviewed. So within the design process, for example, there's already 3 qualified, highly qualified people involved. And then obviously you're talking about the cost of the specific materials. That needs to be an absolute standard of quality. The maintenance around that. So in nuclear, there is no, sorry, we made a mistake. There's no room for that. And therein lies the cost. So I think for Africa, it's been a case of expertise and delivering those engineers and obviously the cost associated with that. So I think in terms of that is where it came about. Before the interview, I was also thinking about it, and the frustration that we're experiencing in the nuclear sector is, I think, the relative speed in which the regulators on the African continent move. So a nuclear project, for example, would necessarily take 5 to 10 years for some of the reasons that I explained. So it takes time to develop. So there's the timing, there's the cost aspect involved, and then there is necessarily the perception created around it. You know, the public sees nuclear as a bad thing necessarily. That's how the media portrays it. I'm not saying it's good nor bad. That is not what I'm saying. But then there's also new technologies in the world. There's small modular reactors. So Coburg, for example, can do 2 mega. The smaller ones can do 1. And it takes a quarter of the space that a Coburg would do. And you could erect 3 or 4 or 5 of these small modular reactors within the country. But I think it's a combination of maybe political will, highly regulated environment, and obviously the cost associated with it. South Africa doesn't have the time for that. Maybe we've waited a bit too late for that. But there are solutions around there, and like you say, there's many plants around the world that are very successful. As an example, the bit of waste that a nuclear plant generates can be housed in a small storeroom, for example. And if you think about coal and solar and so on, that the panels need to be recycled if it can be and needs to be mined, etc. So those are some of the challenges that are faced within the nuclear environment. I'm not sure if that answers your question. We've deviated a bit. But I think we have a challenge in the fact that the coal plants in South Africa need to be refurbished. It needs to be modernized. And I think there's a drive towards that to seek solutions in terms of LNG. LNG poses its own problems. We have a line from Mozambique, and that poses its own problems. We have some ports here in Saldanha, and that's about it. So what the problem in that is the infrastructure situation that South Africa faces as well. Importing LNG is not necessarily the option. That might work out too expensive. So I think the answer ultimately might be, I might be wrong. I'm not a specific scientist, or I can't look into the future, but I think it's going to be a combination of all these little things that might assist in the situation. What I've seen happening is a lot of self-sustainability, and a lot of big players out in the market, your manufacturers or your mining houses, looking at alternatives to, and the layman terms is going off grid. But they're seeking their own gas turbine solutions, LNG solutions, and so on. So I think it's going to be a combination of small IPPs. And what the guys are doing is they're not necessarily focusing on the 200 megawatts. They're saying, okay, let me do 10, let me do 15. So I'm not necessarily have all the regulations and those things that I need to jump through. And I think it might be a combination of all these small things that ultimately going to get the energy situation in South Africa stable. I don't think there's a short fix, golden fix that is out there. And speaking to industry experts and being exposed to that, that's sort of the common theme that is out there. I hope that answers your question. Or if you've
No, it
one,
does. And we're speaking about more broader economic policy, I suppose, but it has such a big impact on our population GDP. I saw recently a stat from, I forgot their name now, Codera, that might be the economist company, showing how our unemployment has increased. And although the GDP has increased since 2000, it's now 2023, our GDP in comparison with the rest of the world has decreased. So there's a big gap between our GDP growth and how the rest of the world's growth has occurred. And sometimes I think that South Africans, we miss it. We don't understand the broader position of South Africa in the global economy, and that we as a country compete with other countries. And that is a very harsh and cutthroat environment, because you need to ensure as a country that trade routes run through your country, and that your country is the source of the energy and gets other countries to be dependent on your country, because that increases the focus and the center of mass So we kind of very airy-fairy, and I don't want to blame the Rainbow Nation concept, but it's like we're going to create a space for everyone, which is good with your neighbors and your country. But when it comes to other countries, they just want to make sure, like China building that Silk Road, and unifying or coordinating all of the Asian countries around China so that everything flows through and within China to other countries. So that increases their trading GDP tremendously. And I suppose the same with the United UAE in Dubai and the Emirates and those airplanes and airports. It's a reason that they have them land in their countries, in Saudi and the UAE, because that brings the tourists. So that's the central hub, and then they go out from there. So somebody in their economy had to think and say, listen, let's ensure that other countries, other people are dependent on us and run their money through us, and that gives you your GDP. So nucleus for me, that just given the sheer size and scale of Africa, I cannot accept that South Korea can have 26 nuclear power plants, Germany, France, even more, but the whole of Africa only one. And that shows to me a lack of policy, a lack of focus on who we want to be as Africans and how we want to position ourselves. We're the number one rugby team in the world, and because we want to beat other teams and we plan how to beat them, we're going to be number one. But when it comes to our economies, we don't do that. We don't sit around and say, listen, how are we going to beat the West? How are we going to beat Asia? How are we going to position ourselves to be the biggest? And that's just, I think, a mindset change that's needed. And that's why I wanted to make it part of the conversation and why your involvement with the city and the nuclear. But let's move back to career development. So if an aspiring, let's say I'm a financial manager, I'm looking to move into the energy field as a CFO, what would be the development areas that you see? Because I think as a CFO in the energy space, there's lots of opportunities. Namibia, they discovered recently those oil fields just off their coast. And I saw a stat the other day that their economy will double within the next few years because of the mass of oil fields that they discovered there. And it's just amazing to see the developments. As an institute, we're also present there and have a large member base. And our focus in our upcoming conference in Namibia will be about the energy sector and how we can gear up accountants to better play a role in energy. So given that energy is such a big issue and you're now positioning yourself as an outsourced CFO, what advice will you give to aspiring financial managers and want to specialize in the energy sector? And if there are companies that's looking for CFOs that specialize in the area, how can they contact you and how would you advise them?
Nicolaas, I think it's important. We are so trained to, and I talk for myself and the people that I've worked with and coached. We are so trained to just look at numbers. The guys out there need to realize that it's not necessarily all about the numbers. To be able to understand the numbers, you need to understand the activities, you need to understand the people, and you need to understand the processes. And you need to start understanding and have an appreciation for the commercial aspects of the business out there. The construction energy sector, I'm just going to refer it as a whole to that, is driven by project management, it is driven by engineering, and it is driven highly on FIDIC, NEC, and those type of commercial skill sets. If I was to enter that market, I would make sure that I get exposure to project management so that I can talk the same language as my peers within those departments. And I would try to make sure that I get commercial exposure very often. And I experienced that with the Teichmann Group, in which I have very high regard for exceptional individuals. But the landscape out there is extremely contractual and commercial driven. And for a good CFO financial manager, you need to be able to interpret those events and eventualities into the business. Businesses are driven by cash and cash flow, and I've experienced, especially after COVID, that a large proportion of my time was spent on cash flow, and that I needed to align myself with commercial directors, legal departments, etc., so that the different financial models, situations, and even the numbers that we churned out on a daily basis could be interpreted in the correct manner. So that would be my advice to guys out there. And I would let them know that they need to put on their safety shoes and get out there. I can't tell someone how to get into an engineering firm necessarily, but I think if you focus on those areas, if I looked at a financial manager and needed to employ someone good, I would look at someone with that type of experience that could understand that and that can talk business language as well. We can't only be focused on the numbers, and that won't necessarily make you a successful CFO or business partner.
Yeah, I think you've raised so many valid points there, and it's good guidance for the aspiring CFO to follow that want to enter this exciting career of energy in all its sector facets. Now that raises the question about the competencies that the modern CFO needs. And there's a research paper that was done in Queen's University a number of years ago, and they came up with this 4 classification system: steward, it was the steward, the strategist, the catalyst, and there's another one. So there's these 4 categories of what the CFO needs to do. And then they plotted at what stages of your career you would achieve them, and where and how. And it's obviously very varied. You start with your classical commercial BCom, then you might do your honors, and then there's this. You might do an articles, but that just gives you the base, and that's where you then qualify as a CA. But that doesn't make you a CFO. So now there's about 8 or 10 years of additional learning that you have to do. And that could then either be internal courses, mentoring, experience, and some CFOs then add aspiring CFOs, they then migrate into an MBA. Others I've seen consider doing that CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, just to move into different areas and sectors and get ready for board level engagement. And that is then what we tried at CIBA with our designation Chartered CFO to kind of map that route of CFO. And what we've seen is a clear split in how you become a CFO with either the traditional CA route, but then there's this large contingent of qualified, competent financial managers that go a different route. And they might then be just the CTA candidates, or they might be engineers. I even saw a lawyer once at one of our iron ore companies, Kumba. He was a lawyer that being the CFO, and that kind of opened my mind, and I did some investigation, and I saw in the US, and that's an interesting stat, only 36% of United States CFOs come from an accounting background, or has that CPA qualification or designation. So that means 64% of them come from other fields, which changes kind of the face of the CFO, because in one sense the CFO is the pinnacle of all accountants. They the top thing that you can achieve as an accountant. It's not auditing, I think it's rather being a CFO. How would you describe that career development, and what would you need in your armory to eventually end in this position as CFO?
Nick, I think let's touch on the US aspect, and you raise an extremely valid point. In South Africa, we've got a very narrow pathway, and it's your traditional pathway. And often I see adverts out there and say, must come from Big Four, must have this, must have that. It doesn't necessarily make a person a good CFO. I was talking the other day to a person, and they were saying, "Oh, I can see you're a generalist." And I went back and I thought by myself, I was first taken aback. And then I thought, but maybe that is it. Look, a CFO needs to understand the numbers. He needs the classical education. You need to understand a set of IFRS financial statement. It's vitally important. But in the US, you get people with economics backgrounds, etc. There's a lot more focus on business, business management, entrepreneurship, and technology. I think a good CFO needs to understand the specific industry he's in. We can't all know every single industry. And like you said, there might be lawyers out there. I've met exceptional engineers that I thought had better finance knowledge than myself. I thought, well, why do you need me? So that opened my eyes as well. I don't necessarily have a specific answer, but I tend to agree with you that the financial skill set, one needs to integrate that and position yourself to tell yourself, look, I have a forte for a specific industry, and then pursue those type of specific industries so that you can understand the base of the operations. A CFO in the education space might not necessarily be suited for the mining space. So you have to specialize in some way or form. I hope that answers your question. I don't think there's necessarily a golden route, but to have a broad skill set is exceptionally important. To understand the importance of business conduct, how to put deals together, how to harness business relationships, how to conduct yourself in a boardroom, but understand those dynamics as well. How to convey the message from the CEO down to your team, but that doesn't mean you going and sitting in your Eiffel Tower and talking to them. It means rolling up your sleeve and working on a plan on how to implement that on a day-to-day basis with your team. So it encompasses a wide variety of aspects. The CFO, there's a lot of young, talented, very clever people out there, with all due respect, but it does come from experience. You have to have walked the walk. You have to experience a couple of things. And I think I hope that answers your question. It's very broad, but there is a big difference in the way Europe and the US does it, and it tends to be successful. I don't think there's a golden answer for it necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's a bit traditional in how South Africa was set up, but there are alternative ways, and they might be better. So the four roles of the CFO has now been defined as the steward, the operator, the catalyst, and the strategist.
True.
And those are the ones that we built into our competency framework for aspiring CFOs. So if listeners want to hop over to the CFO Club, we're doing a number of articles on those specific topics. That's what we're focusing on in our posts. And if you join the CFO Club, there's a nice handbook that also covers those specific roles and explains them and shows aspiring CFOs where and how to obtain them. So that's what we want to do at the CFO Club, just illuminating more of these roles and get a standard and spread information. Now, in your new role, you mentioned that you're focusing on like a consulting. I think the word is that I know is outsourced CFO. I think there's a big need in our economy at all levels of business, whether it's small, medium, or large, for people taking their many years of experience and making this available to entities that previously couldn't afford a high-level CFO. Thank you for doing this. I think it's a good initiative. So what did you decide, and how did you decide to do this, and how do you want to engage with the market, and how can entities that's looking for just another set of eyes, or maybe the current CFO or the systems is struggling, how will they engage with you, and what's the way forward for yourself?
Nick, so I believe it's the experience that I've gained through working with entrepreneurs. The US economy is not built, and economies are not built on big corporates. Every single corporate has an entrepreneur behind it, had an idea behind it. South Africa is an environment where you need to get out and do it yourself. There are many SMEs out there that need that bit of advice, that special touch on a business plan, that person that knows a specific person in a financial institution with an extra set of eyes. That person can say, but have you thought about this? What about this IT solution? And they not necessarily can afford a CFO at an X rate per month, but they can afford the bit of time that an expert in a specific field can assist them with to guide them in that route. South Africa has many SMEs, and that is the heartbeat of our economy. If it isn't for entrepreneurs, if it isn't for SMEs, South Africa would not have an economy. And I think that is where my passion lies. My passion lies with the development of people, development of businesses. I've worked in Africa where I've encountered entrepreneurs, and I've seen them sweat. It's not an easy road to walk, but I've seen the fruits that come from that. And I think ultimately what you put back into the community and into people, that is what creates satisfaction. I was driving up to Port Elizabeth to visit my sis recently. She's very ill, and one thinks a lot about these things. And I think what ultimately is important is what we leave with other people, how to develop them. And I think I'm well positioned to be able to do that. People can reach me on my mobile number. I'm not sure if I can give it. It is on my LinkedIn page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So my mobile number is 083 480 9301. You can contact me by clicking on my LinkedIn page. My contact details are there as well. And Nicolaas, thank you for that opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Fransua. And I think there's also an opportunity to work with existing accountants in practice that might have the article experience that didn't develop into CFOs with big corporates. And they often have big clients that need the CFO perspective, that's enhanced systems, enhanced software, enhanced operations that they not might have the skills with. So that is where I think you would come in as an outsourced CFO to have a look at the system. So also for existing VAPs, please make sure to contact Fransua. And then Fransua, as CIBA, we have this initiative in Namibia. We're setting up this conference within the energy sector. I'm going to ask my team to contact you. But we also would need some advice, I suppose, and guidance on how to position our members to work within the energy sector. When we spoke with the relevant authorities in Namibia, you can also hear from them. They're also not quite sure how they're going to manage the wealth that they're going to create. There's a big...
Absolutely.
You can see they're thinking hard about, they don't want it to get captured or stolen or siphoned off overseas. They want to make sure it stays in Namibia, but they don't have enough skill sets to assist them in doing that. So we think there's an initiative in Namibia that we can assist the energy departments and the mining companies, and we're definitely going to ask our representative to contact you and assist us in guiding maybe our courses and things within the sector. So it's been exciting talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing us your insights, and I'm sure we'll have you back on stage, even if it's not for a podcast interview, but maybe as a CIBA Energy CFO. So thank you very much, Fransua.
Nicolaas, thank you for you, and then once again, compliments to what you're doing, and may you have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have done the work. You have earned the title. Now get the designation. CIBA's most sought after CFO SA designation gives you the credibility and objective recognition of the 34 competencies that you have mastered on your route to becoming a CFO. CIBA's most sought after CFO designation gave me the credibility and objective recognition of the 34 competencies that I have mastered on my route, grounded in an internationally recognized competency framework requiring knowledge and experience in strategy, operations, and finance. Being part of the CFO Club Africa opens you up to a network of CFOs. The CFO SA designation is relevant to you if you have experience in performing various finance executive functions within the finance department. Being part of this elite group of modern CFOs helps you grow alongside your peers in a valuable source of advice on leadership challenges. If you are looking to demonstrate your leadership abilities to the future employers, then this designation is for you. Apply now. It's time to step it up. Become a finance leader and get recognized as a CFO. This is your CIBA.